You are listening to 95.7 FM WELT, Fort Wayne, Radioactive. The opinions and views expressed in this show are those of the hosts and guests only. They do not represent those of FreeThought Fort Wayne, WELT, or any other organization. Welcome to the Hoosier Humanist Hour, where we explore science, religion, culture, ethics, and community from the humanist perspective. Join us as we discuss those topics and more, free from the ideologies of religion and superstition.
Hello and welcome to the Hoosier Humanist Hour. This show is put together by members of FreeThought Fort Wayne, Inc., our chapter of the American Humanist Association. If you want to find out more about our group, our website is www.freethoughtfw.org. Probably what's even better is our Facebook page, facebook.com/freethoughtfw. Our email address is fortwayneaha@gmail.com. Today on the show, we have Chris, Caleb, myself, V, and our sound engineer, Andrew. And we're going to talk about Christmas. This show, I believe, is actually going to air a day or two after Christmas, but that's okay. In particular, I think we're going to try to mention the ever popular War on Christmas. So this whole War on Christmas, I believe, started mainly with a book that was actually published in 2005 by a guy named John Gibson. And the title of the book was called The War on Christmas, How the Liberal Plot to Ban the Sacred Christian Holiday is Worse Than You Thought. Now, I have to admit, I haven't read the book, but we've certainly, heard enough about it on TV and various media. I mean, talk radio has talked about it. While Bill O'Reilly was still in Fox News, he picked it up and just ran with this thing. Every year he talked about the war on Christmas and, this fake outrage over saying happy holidays and all this other fun stuff.
No, I agree. I honestly, in my opinion, I think Bill O'Reilly was the one who really popularized it. I mean, there's 55 million people that watch that show, and he made it a big thing. I mean, you know how they used to have the War on Terror real big in the bottom, and during the holiday season, instead of War on Terror, it was War on Christmas. And so people are still fresh in this War on Terror mindset. That kind of got burned into our brains at that time, and then they throw this at you, and it just slaps a lot of people in the face. I mean, the people who really trust O'Reilly and trust Fox, they look at that and go, whoa, War on Christmas, what?
Yeah, they really think that we're trying to, and by we, I don't just mean humanists, I mean just in general, anybody that's not Christian. They think that we're trying to destroy Christmas and take it away from Christians and all that. In fact, there was statistics that I read that people that watch Fox News were 10% more likely to believe that the war on Christmas is like a real thing where people are actually deliberately out there trying to destroy Christmas. And I thought that was pretty crazy.
Yeah, well, see, what they would do is they would just twist these stories where people were trying to get nativity scenes off of public property and make it seem as if we're trying to make it so the nativity scenes are not allowed anywhere, which is just absolutely ridiculous. We just didn't want that stuff on public. Well, the people who didn't want that stuff there, just didn't want it there. It's public property. Anything that's tax paid, it shouldn't be there. I think last year we had this a similar conversation about a story which had recently broke about somebody who wanted the cross taken down or something off the top of the Christmas tree in this town hall. I think it was a cross. Anybody remember? I think it was a cross.
Yeah, that's happened multiple times in multiple places, and there's been lawsuits and all that kind of stuff. And it's happened with crosses, with nativity scenes, with other Christian symbols in various places. I mean, it's the same argument. I mean, there was the famous case with the Ten Commandments in that court. I mean, it's a government endorsement of religion, and it has no business in the public square.
Well, on this, there's other examples too that reach into like public school, for example. There are, there's still the Freedom from Religion Foundation still has cases where people are trying to make it so that their schools don't have these nativity plays, and they're like not asking for volunteers; they're just taking them in and having them do this play. And or just kind of forcing them to watch it, but I don't think that's really a big deal in my opinion. But forcing these kids to participate in this ritual, and obviously there have been people who didn't want this, and they're in their right not to want this. So that sort of thing has come up as well within the public schools. There's also the imagery within the schools as well. People didn't want just Christian imagery. There were people who were arguing that they wanted to have some of their Islamic imagery in there as well, and Jewish imagery. And so now you kind of mostly see snowflakes and such like that.
Yeah. I mean, the problem is when when this stuff is forced on you. So let's say a school wants to have a Christmas celebration. Let's say they make attendance mandatory. I mean, that should be totally illegal, because now you have a government institution endorsing a religion, and that shouldn't be allowed. Now, if the kids got together and wanted to make their own thing, and it was and the school provided, for example, the gym where they could make a play or something like that, that would be totally fine, because it wasn't, at least in my opinion it would be, because it wasn't, it's not mandatory. It didn't originate from the school. They're just providing the property. But by that same token, like if a Muslim group or secular group or somebody like that wanted to have a similar celebration, they should be allowed to. It's about equality. All different religions should be just treated the same. And I think part of the outrage that these people express, it just omits certain realities in U.S. society today. I mean, there is a very high percentage of people that they're either not religious or belong to some other religious group other than Christianity. I mean, as many as 30% of people in the United States are not Christian. And that includes like Muslims, Buddhists, people that flat out consider themselves atheists. It includes people that just deny religious affiliation. It's a broader group of people, but nonetheless, I mean, 30% of people in the United States do not consider themselves Christian.
I think the figure is actually a bit higher than that, to be honest with you, because last I checked, I thought that the nuns and the atheists combined were at 25%. I thought not too long in a recent.
Yeah, the faction of like the other religious groups is fairly small. I was just looking at this just before the show started, and from the Pew Research. And I'm not sure if I got the latest chart or not, but the chart that I looked, I think it was a recent one, listed all other religions as only about 6%.
Oh, wow.
And the religious nuns were about 23-ish, 24-ish. So still, it almost, if not right at 30%. But that also ignores a different fact. I mean, I listen to a lot of David Silverman, and he has argued that there's a very large population of people that will identify as Christian for no good reason other than the fact that they don't want to be outed. Basically, that
yeah, I can believe that
they don't want other people to find out that they're atheist, or or they don't believe as a Christian, or maybe they're deists, or who knows what. And that's why American Atheist, I mean, last year their billboard that they put up, I think, was something along the lines of "Make Christmas Great Again, Skip Church." And Yeah. And I was listening to an interview on Fox News with the vice president of American Atheist, and he was saying that the real the target audience for that billboard that they put up was actually like closeted atheists that they wanted to encourage to come out or to skip church or you know stuff
Oh,
like
that's
that.
clever. Okay, I see what they're doing there. Like a
Yes.
okay, I can see that as kind of like a little, in a lot of situations, a subtle, stick it to the man, if you will, kind of maneuver. Like if your whole family expects you to be at church and you're not at church. you, you
Right.
know, I could see that. That's actually pretty clever.
Yeah. So this year actually and so the this year's billboard that American Atheists put up, and I guess this is kind of like the little grain of truth that if you squint really hard you can kind of pick out as a war on Christmas is like precisely these billboards. And I think this year I'm on their website, and this is an article from November the 30th, and there's several designs that I'm seeing here for billboards. I'm not sure which one is actually up because the map that they have over here didn't load quite right. But one of them just has a nativity scene. It's like just a little cartoon drawing with um, you know Mary and Joseph and Jesus and the barn there with the animals and the what do they called, the Magi or whatever they were called. I don't know.
Three
And it just
wise men.
the three wise men. That's who it was, not the Magi. What am I thinking? Anyways, but right across the top, it just says fake news.
That's funny.
One of the other designs over here is kind of like it's the same. Um, it's the same nativity scene, only it's a little bit wider, and it just says, "Just skip church. It's all fake news."
It's
And I
beautiful.
think the last one on there. Um, oh yeah. Ha, this is a good one too. Um, oh, this is gonna be out there, I guess, from March to April. Um, I don't know why they would put this one up from March to April of next year, but it just has like this night like city landscape, and there's the Santa Claus's sleigh with the reindeer like right on top of it all, and it just says, "Just like Santa Claus, the atheists are coming to town." I think that's for their convention. I think that's for their convention. Yeah. So
It might just be out of necessity. I mean, because billboards are really, really expensive, especially in like New York, for example. Isn't that where these are? Or
um
Jersey or something like that?
let's see. Oh, this billboard design appears in Oklahoma City and Tulsa markets. So I think that's where there's going to be their their convention that year. Oh, the one that says with the fake news thing, it's in Albuquerque and Dallas.
Okay.
So
Well,
so they're,
really,
they're they're
sorry, go
catching attention. They're catching attention by putting these up, and people are discussing them. They were brought up in Fox News. Fox News invited people from the organization to talk about it, and that's exactly what they want. The billboard in and of itself is expensive, but it's the bang for their buck that they're getting by posting these because it riles people up, and you know,
ahead.
it's one way to sell your message.
Absolutely. And, I remember there was a period where I was humoring myself, trying to see how much it would cost to get a billboard put up of anything, really.
Okay.
And the cheapest I could find here in town of Fort Wayne was like $740 a month to have that thing up there. And I was like, golly, that is really expensive. And it really makes you appreciate, like, when you see all these other, like, Christian billboards are a dime a dozen. I mean, those
Right.
things are
Right.
everywhere. We just don't
Yeah, I
have
mean, seven
the
hundred bucks for
resources for
yeah, $700 for a church is nothing. Like this is laying around the couch, under the seat cushion, chump change for any self-respecting church. I mean, even the smallest church can probably afford the $700 bill for um if they wanted to put up any kind of billboard. But given that some of the secular groups out there, their budgets are way smaller, right? I mean, um, American Atheists is a big group. American Humanist Association, which we're affiliated with, like those guys can afford the $700. It's no big deal. But a local organization like ours, that'd be
Yeah.
such a huge chunk out of our budget that is just not worth it.
It's one of the biggest issues that we have within atheist, secular, and humanist communities and the like is, we just lack the infrastructure that the religious have, and it really, I honestly think and I doubt I'm alone on this, but I'm pretty sure that this is probably the largest hurdle that we have in our movement, is just the sheer fact that we just kind of we lack the resources. And we also, I honestly think that the secular tend to be less involved in this sort of thing as well, in my opinion. There's no real reason to go to the meetups if you already have a group of friends that you are capable of talking to, so you just kind of hang around and do that sort of thing. But the church is a big incentive. I mean, in the Catholic Church, you're obligated to go. You have to go.
Right. Yeah, and I mean that's what religious groups do is they in and among themselves, like they kind of sort of police each other almost, like they oh, he's not going to church, and they encourage each other, they push each other to do all these things, to get involved, to donate to the church. I mean, there is not an atheist on this planet or a humanist or any kind of non-believer that's going to donate 10% of their income to any organization out there. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, not very likely. Yeah.
You would have to be like really, really involved in some cause. If you're in a group for like saving animals or something like that, maybe you'll donate that kind of money. But unless you're really part of a group like that, there's no chance that you're going to donate that much time and money and effort and all that to these. So that's why it's hard to organize. I mean, I've brought this example up before, but it was a few years ago. There was a hurricane that had hit the U.S., and I think it was actually Wolf Blitzer was interviewing this lady, and she came out as an atheist on national TV. It just kind of came out. She didn't really expect that because he asked her if she was thanking God for this, and I think she had just had enough of it all, and she just said no, and explained that she's an atheist and all that. But then in the subsequent interview, she was talking about how organized these groups are, and she was saying how churches were there on the ground, like matching T-shirts, like big teams of them. Within like the next day, they were there and helping with cleanups and doing all this stuff. And people of the same group would be from different cities, from different states, but these larger organizations make it really easy to organize, to bring them together, to give them a task and to let them go, and they go and help and do all that. Where that's just, I mean, what do we have as humanists? I mean, there's the American Humanist Association, but that's not really that big. Most people haven't even heard of it. There's
I'm
American Atheist, but few people have heard of that too.
I was surprised at how many people I know that don't even know what humanism is. I ask people at work all the time now. I try to subtly bring up humanism, just kind of, I don't know, have a conversation or something. I don't know.
Sure.
And it's kind of shocking to me how many people have never even heard of humanism, quite honestly. Yeah. And we make up a pretty decent portion. I mean, we're obviously a minority, but I mean, it's just kind of surprising to me that the philosophy hasn't penetrated that deep into the culture.
I mean, there's probably more people out there. Oh no, go ahead, Chris.
Oh, sorry. I was just asking. Are you looking to penetrate deeper? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, as deep as I can get, man.
Okay, that's very good. Just making sure we're keeping the sexual innuendos in there, so we keep this nice and adult as much as possible. But no. But all joking aside, you guys are absolutely right, and I feel like that should be one of our goals as an organization. Being that we are the second largest city in Indiana, and yet somehow we are the only organized humanist, non-religious type group in the entire city. That's a little surprising.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
it's been so hard to motivate people to get involved, and to actually volunteer to do stuff. I mean, that's kind of been our group's biggest struggle. Like, there's so much that we want to do, and I mean, we just don't have the resources. We don't have the manpower. Even though so many people, you know, identify as non-religious, and it would probably or religious nuns, I guess I should say, and they would probably identify with the values of humanism and of our group, and I mean, we deliberately, you know, when we formed this whole thing, attached ourselves to the American Humanist Association because of their positive values, positive outlook, and you know, um, but it's been very very hard. Yeah,
and I think. Sorry, go ahead.
Nah, I've done plenty. Go ahead.
Sorry. I was just going to say, this is one of those situations where I think one of our greatest abilities might be preying upon the weaknesses of religion. The fact that they like to demonize so many other groups, and that's one of the things that we've seen, at least up in Michigan, that one of the groups that Christians, maybe not necessarily demonize, but definitely kind of despise and kick around a little bit, are the Jews.
Oh yeah, for sure.
We've been able to monopolize upon that, at least up in Michigan, because they have a very nice secular Jewish congregation, which is really bizarre, and I still don't completely understand it.
Interesting.
But they basically keep all of their Jewish customs, of being kosher and whatnot, but and the celebrations. But the reason.
Oh no.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine, but Chris just disappeared.
Oh crap! Sky, I thought my phone did the thing again. Okay.
Oh, he dropped out.
Right.
Okay.
At least.
All right. Oh. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, that was the most horrific cliffhanger ever. The reason.
Yeah, you said the reason, and you're gone.
Dang it! Where did I said the reason? What was I saying?
You're talking about the Jewish secular.
Yeah. So I was just saying, it's nice to have groups like that who have broken off and learned to live with their customs, but not necessarily have God involved in their customs and habits. They basically remove God from the equation entirely, and they're like, all right, well, we'll eat kosher, we'll celebrate these different things, these different holidays, but the reason why we're doing it is just for habit's sake.
So do you think they go so far as to celebrate the Sabbath?
Honestly, I don't know. I'd have to ask them.
Yeah, that would be a difficult one to adhere to. Regardless, I mean, and a lot of Jews, even ones that are actually religious, I don't think they adhere to it in like this strict way where you're not supposed to work, you're not supposed to do anything, and like all that. Very few people adhere to it in that way. One thing that I was thinking about while you were talking about Jews is there's probably more people in the U.S. that would identify as non-believers, actually atheists, and potentially even as humanists than there are Jews, and yet so few people even know what a humanist is or what is the definition of atheism, when there's nobody you can ask that's not going to know. If you ask them, hey, what does it mean to be Jewish, they're going to know the answer.
Yeah, well, we didn't have the great humanist Holocaust, that's kind of, and it wasn't. I'm just. It wasn't dubbed such. When people think of the Holocaust, they think of Jews going to the chambers. That's like the first thing, and then it kind of goes down the list from there. And plus, Judaism is it's that's where Christianity comes from, and Islam ultimately as well. So it's not too surprising to me that the Jews, for example, are that popular. Plus, you have, I mean, they're tied in. Anti-Semitism is a huge thing.
Okay. So I completely agree. Completely agree. Those are very important, big things. I don't feel like it's stated enough that atheists or non-believers have historically been the most discriminated against group out of all religious belief groups.
Yeah.
Period. I mean, it's just if you even cite something that's against the major religion, it's either against the law or it's one of those things that ends up getting you kicked out of the camp and you never come back.
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
that
it's
would
just,
also, yeah, you know, and
Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, you know, that ultimately means that this anti-humanist mentality is inherent within the religions themselves, because a lot of people don't even know what humanists are, and yet we're discriminated against on the left and right. Same with atheists and such. But I mean,
well, there are laws in the books in the United States. I mean, they're unconstitutional and they can't be applied. But in various states, they're, from what I understand, still in the books, where if you don't recognize some kind of deity, you are not allowed to hold public office. Now, again, as I said, it's unconstitutional. It's not enforced. Yada yada yada. But the fact itself that those things are still there is very bothersome to me.
Yeah. There's a lot of stupid laws on the books, and I think that the main reason for that is just simply, it's a lot of work to do that. It sounds simple to just scratch something off of a list or something, but legally, especially when you're talking about state constitutions, for example, like Texas, like you were describing, is that way, and it's an unenforceable law, so they just kind of deal with it and work around it. Because I guess, if you're going to remove something from the state constitution, it's not something that can be done easily and overnight.
Yeah, I don't know.
What's terrifying is having current people who are in political office sit here and claim that you cannot be in political office unless you swear into that office position on a Christian Bible. And where they try to make this argument that you can't be Muslim, you can't be atheist, you have to be Christian in order to serve in public office in the United States.
There was a very, very recent case, actually, that I watched this interview, and it has to do with Roy Moore, who lost the elections in Alabama. And I don't know if the guy was like his chief strategist or worked for the campaign, but he was like one of the top campaign people. And the journalist was asking him to comment on the fact that Roy Moore had said precisely that you shouldn't be allowed in office, or you're not qualified for office if you're a Muslim, for example. And the way the guy responded was, and this was just so mind blowing, was that you're not qualified for that because you have to swear on a Christian Bible, and a Muslim couldn't swear on the Christian Bible. And the journalist at that point in time just had this dumbfounded look, like, is this guy really serious in what he's saying? And he tried to explain to him that, you almost certainly don't have to, well, not almost, but certainly you're not required to swear on a Bible or any book in particular. You can swear in the Quran, you can swear on any kind of other book. And this guy just had this deer in the headlights look when the journalist explained that, and there was this awkward silence, and he couldn't respond to that. He couldn't say anything to that. The guy was literally not aware of the fact that you don't have to swear on a Christian Bible. You could swear on any book. You could swear on the Quran. You can probably pull out Carl Sagan's book and swear in the demon haunted world for.
Yep, I was gonna say I would swear in on God is not great. That's what
there you go. That would be a bold move. That would be a bold move.
Just saying. I really should. Well, yeah, that's fine. I'm okay with it. I'll let it fester. If I ever were to, in theory, ever run for public office, it's possible that this might come out, but I highly doubt.
I wonder. I kind of wish there was. I had looked it up, before the show, but I didn't know the conversation was going to come in this way. But what kind of books people have used to swear on when they're taking public office, where they're required to do that? I wonder if anybody had used the Quran or some other secular book or what, because I know Keith Ellison, he just recently ran for the Democratic Party chair, and he didn't win it, but I know he's a Muslim, so I wonder when he was elected to Congress if he had to swear, and I wonder if he swore on the Quran or not.
I don't see why not. There is literally no law that says you have to swear in on the Bible for anything.
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah, definitely. I would like to swear on my own book. So
there you go.
I just need to publish a book and then have my own book to swear on. That sounds good.
I swear on my own honor. That's decent. That's decent.
So what's do you have any idea what the topic of your book is going to be, or?
I have at least 3 different books in progress. So
okay.
Yeah, it's just depending
Maybe
on which one publishes
snakes
first.
I think it'd be interesting if it was a book about snakes.
Yep. 2 of them are about snakes.
So. Wonderful. Anyways, one thing that's, to kind of take us back to the original conversation about Christmas and all that is, all this war on Christmas, it only appears as a war, in my opinion, because Christians have had so much privilege in society that when other groups demand equality, to them it looks like persecution. It looks like you're trying to take away their Christianity. I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
I think that they're looking for. I honestly think that they're looking for an equality of outcome that's unrealistic, because everybody wants equality of opportunity, and they'll say the same thing. They just don't want to see Muslim imagery and icons, and that sort of thing. They don't want to see Hindu statues at the courthouse and that sort of stuff. So that's just, they're in this unfortunate mindset, and this woe is me mentality is ridiculous, and it upsets me dearly.
Yeah, I think there was a case, and I may butcher this, but I think I'll get the fundamentals of it correctly. Some religious organization wanted to distribute Bibles in a school, and through a longer process, if they wanted to distribute Bibles, they had to allow other groups to distribute their religious books. And I think it was actually Muslims that wanted to bring like the Quran to the school and like distribute it to people that may be interested in taking a look. And like with the first wave where they were distributing the Bible, it's like nobody had the problem with it. But then as soon as the Quran showed up, like people just lost it. They got upset. Parents were screaming and yelling, and the school shut it down. So they decided that they weren't going to allow any. So it's just an example of when another group asks to be treated equally, people get upset and they feel like we're infringing on their rights as Christians or who knows what.
And that's exactly right, especially this time of year. If you think about somebody wanting to do a play about Muhammad, as opposed to Jesus, well, that's going to generate some buzz.
And at least we know that for absolute certainty that Muhammad was a real person. We don't know that about Jesus.
This is a good point. This is very good. Actually, it is funny. I actually just saw the cover of a recent National Geographic that was something like "The Proof of Jesus" or something like that. And you go to actually read the article. If you actually read it, it cites all these suppositions and hypotheses, and at the very end, it's like, well, we really don't have any evidence.
No good.
Oh, wow. So you save we don't really have any evidence of his existence for the very end of the article because nobody's going to read that far.
Well, yeah, I mean that's what so many people will do is they'll just skim the title of an article, and there was oh gosh, it was one of the famous atheists out there. I think it was the guy that calls. No, it wasn't the friendly atheist. I think it was the thinking atheist. I can't think of his name right now, but
Seth Andrews.
yes. I think in one of his podcasts, he was saying that when he first came out as an atheist, like somebody tried to hand him some book of apologetics that supposedly proved the truth of Christianity, and he asked him if they had read that book, and they said no. So they just saw a title, it sounded good, and just bought the book to give it to him, never reading it, never realizing if what it says in there is even remotely makes sense. Just like that article, Chris, you mentioned. Nobody was going to read to the bottom of it where it says, "Well, we really, all of this is kind of up in the air, and it doesn't really have, conclude anything to any certain degree." But
That's a good point. And I kind of want to throw this out there. I think we should do an episode on mythicism at some point. I honestly had never heard this word until like 3-4 years ago. So I think it should be put out there into the public. But I toe the line between mythicism and legendary growth. I'm honestly not sure myself. I'm not really convinced one way or the other.
I mean, I as a person that hasn't like read the gazillion books, I don't know that I can make the most founded claim out there. But from what I've read, from what I've seen, from what people have talked about, to me, just like it kind of comes down to like any legend out there has a kernel of truth to it. So like there may have been some guy that made some claims, and some things got spun around him, and some uh, religious philosophies from here and there of the region got put together, and it just kind of grew into this following that they kept on growing, and the myth kept changing from person to person. Every time the story was retold, it was something else, and um, the earliest even mention that's actually believed to be fake about Jesus is like decades after he was dead. So in any kind of written material. So
yeah, an excellent. Just to kind of get back to the conversation, I can tie this together. An excellent person to listen to on this would be like Richard Carrier, for example. Robert B. Wright, I think his name is another good one. There's a couple of good mythicists out there. But by the way, in case for those of you who haven't figured it out and don't know, mythicism is this hypothesis that Jesus might not have actually existed at all, that he might be pure myth. And anyway, so like Richard Carrier, for example, I love him. He's my favorite. Richard Carrier is one of probably the most well-known mythicists. He's actually got the only peer-reviewed article in the last, I think like 40, 50 years at least, published about mythicism. It's gone through the peer review and it's out there. So, and it's actually a book. It's a book too. So you can go out there and get. I think it was on the historicity of Jesus. I could be wrong about that, but he's also written a couple of other little books. There's a very readable book. I forgot the title of it. I think it was like the Star or Star of Bethlehem or something like that. But he goes through and explains exactly how the nativity narrative is complete fabrication, and most of what we think is in this narrative is nowhere in the Bible. There's quite a good chunk of it that can't even really be explained other than just it grew out of recent culture. So that's kind of interesting, because there's a lot of aspects about Christmas that come up every year too, with this war on Christmas. There's another popular thing that conversationally is this notion that there's a lot of paganism within Christmas, so that sort of thing comes up, and those are some fun conversations to have too. There's actually,
I mean, just when you think about it, the biggest symbol about Christmas, the Christmas tree. It's a decorated tree. It's an evergreen in most cases, but these trees don't grow in Israel. Like really, there's no way to find that tree in Israel. Like there's no way anybody around the time when Jesus was born had a tree like that in their house.
And that's
It's
and
not
that's part of
possible.
what's hilarious. I think just going back to one of the previous topics you talked about, as far as shaming during the Christmas season,
Yeah.
shaming people for not coming to a Christmas dinner or not celebrating Christmas in the most festive way. That's what makes it so hilarious, because it's like you realize that 90% of all things that are Christmas are pagan or completely made up by American culture. That's that's what 90% of Christmas is just nonsense and from nothing. Nothing to do with Christianity at all. So it's hilarious when they're like, "Oh my gosh, you're so terrible for not celebrating Christmas." And it's like, actually you're terrible for celebrating Christmas when you're a Christian, because it's 90% pagan and made
Yeah,
up.
in
So,
fact, the first Christians in the U.S. Uh, had banned the celebration of Christmas because of the pagan origins of it.
that's
Yeah.
right.
It wasn't actually. I mean, I'm reading this straight from an article here. In what they're saying was it wasn't until the year 350 A.D. that Pope Julius the First declared that the Christ Mass would be held on December 25th to celebrate the birth of Jesus. So it was like 350 years, into the common era that we started even celebrating it on that date. Previously to that, there was many other religions and gods that had all kinds of celebrations right around this time of the year because it's the winter solstice in the northern hemisphere. And so I guess the list that they give here, um, let's see, it was the sun god Mithra, the Egypt's god Horus and Ra, Syria's Baal, Rome's Sol, and Greece's Helios. They all had, celebrations um, right around this time of year for the winter solstice, which I guess is on December the 21st. Um, so you'll see that sometimes on some of the billboards. They'll say something along the lines of winter solstice is the reason for the season. Um,
This whole paganism notion, though, it's like the Christmas tree tradition itself. I mean, that can be traced back to Germany, when people used to. There were ancient peoples in Germany that worshipped trees and bears, and
sure.
there are certain elements of that religions or spirituality sort of thing that kind of seeped its way into that culture. And then the whole notion of passing around presents didn't happen until recently. It was more or less started by a single family that just kind of had this tradition of doing it, and it just kind of blossomed into this thing.
According to
But
the article that I was reading here in Life Sciences, it was actually the Queen of England in
yeah,
1850 that the Queen Victoria that she gave her children Christmas Eve gifts. I guess there was like a sword and armor and um, you know she gave her husband Prince Albert a miniature portrait of her as a 7-year-old girl. Um, and
yeah,
so I think that's what started the whole gift giving thing.
yeah.
Um,
And on this lines of historicity and Christmas and all that, a lot of people want to tie in this war on Christmas with the fact that they honestly and truly believe that this is a Christian nation founded by Christians with Christian ideology in mind, and that is just not the case. And in fact, it wasn't even until over 100 years after the founding of this nation that Christmas became a federal holiday. Now, granted, I don't think it should be a federal holiday, though most people probably don't complain about the free holiday. But I don't know. I don't know. I'm not. I personally feel like it should be a freaking holiday that's celebrated by our government. That aside, either way, it wasn't something that was there during the founding of this nation. So this idea that we're stealing Christmas away is ridiculous. There's no real solid foundation to that argument.
yeah, and I mean when you think about it, what's great about Christmas is not it's nothing to do with Christianity. It's the Christmas tree. Decorating it with family. It's the Christmas lights. Those are things that are great. Spending time with family, taking a day off, having a good meal, exchanging presents. You know, just relaxing for a day or two. Like those are the things that are great about Christmas. And I love the Yule log. This was a thing back home. People would put a log in the fireplace um, on Christmas Eve, and I later learned that here in the U.S. it's called a Yule log, and Yule is an ancient god, um, and I guess they must have had a holiday around this time that include log burning. So it's just another non-Christian tradition that many people do, even here in the U.S. Many Christians do. So it's really like only the mass that very few people go to, from what I understand, on Christmas that um, is the Christian thing about Christmas. Everything else is not Christian, no matter how you look at it.
Yeah, and I kind of want to focus on this in our last couple minutes here because, um, honestly, I don't listen to Fox. I never really have, but I haven't this year so much seen this war on Christmas as blown up as it has, and probably due to the fact that O'Reilly's not sitting in the chair. But
Oh, sure.
instead, now we have the privilege of having Donald Trump. He's out there literally saying, "We're saying Merry Christmas again," as if you
Right.
could never say it before. He's trying to just, first of all, honestly, I think this is just one big appeal to the evangelicals. But that aside, it just keeps stirring the pot for no reason, and the president's doing
Oh,
this.
there's a very good reason. There's a very good reason. I mean, this is, I don't want to sound overly dramatic, but this is almost like the weaponization of Christmas. You know, it's used as a divisive tool, as if, you know, it's making Christians feel oppressed for absolutely no good reason. And he's coming out as this defender of their values. And, you know, it's just people are complaining that the Russians hacked our elections and they spread all these fake news to sow discord in our society. Well, just uttering those words does the exact same thing. It's upsetting uh, Christians that for no good reason, for something that's just wrong. It's true. You know, saying Merry Christmas was always okay, and everybody has always been able to do it. And um, when he says these things, it's divisive. It's a
Yeah,
divide and conquer mentality that he wants to use for political gain.
and
It's
what's
very
interesting,
sad.
just to give further evidence towards that, I went to the Trump appearance here in Fort Wayne when he was campaigning. As a result, I was signed up automatically into the Trump chain emails.
Oh,
Well, yeah. So one of those chain emails that was just sent today, actually, this morning, was from Mike Pence. Quote from Mike Pence. I don't know
right,
if
right.
yeah. But anyway, point is that it was from supporters of the current administration, and it's basically saying that you know this is a Christmas card that you can sign and be a part of the official First Family Christmas card, because yes, we are saying Merry Christmas again. Yeah, it's
This
just
is
it's
so
so
sad.
bizarre. It's so bizarre. And it's sitting here
Yeah,
saying I'm so thankful for and incredibly humbled by all of God's blessings and all this other stuff. And it's just like, oh my gosh, dude, that's
from the
crazy.
vice president of the United States of America. Obama went out of his way to just go and say happy holidays. And that in and of itself, oh my goodness, man. People think that we're trying to subsume Merry Christmas and forcing people to say happy holidays instead. And it's that in and of itself, by the way, for those of you who don't know, there is no law anywhere that says no company or corporation or person can say Merry Christmas in any given situation. There's nothing like that out there. It's purely done on a business by business, corporation by corporation, individual by individual basis. That's it. I remember Fox News being up in arms because they were all upset that all these different establishments were saying Happy Holidays as opposed to Merry Christmas. There was one where one of the anchors was going on a long rant because the Fox News website itself did the same thing. But it just makes sense, people, to
Yeah,
to do that. You especially think about it if you're like Amazon. Walmart or something. I mean, even if say 1 in 500 people are gonna get offended enough by the Merry Christmas that's associated with Walmart, for example, if that were to be a thing, and not shop there, something like Walmart, that big of a corporation, that 1 in 500 makes a big difference. So of course, they're going to say Happy Holidays, and
Well, a lot of people are upset at Starbucks because of their cups that they didn't say Merry Christmas anymore. They were just, they had like a festive decor on them for the holidays, but they didn't have the Merry Christmas message anymore. And people are calling for boycotts on Starbucks. And what these people don't realize is that, as we mentioned earlier, 30% of the people in the U.S. are not Christian. To them,
oh yeah,
pushing Christmas in their face may very well be offensive. So, of course, they're going to say Happy Holidays. They're looking to not upset 30% of their base.
yeah, that's a good point right there. But on that,
their customer base.
Though, man, do you remember that dude in that it was like a bigger guy with the beard and backwards hat? He walked out of the Starbucks and he was like, "I put Merry Christmas on this cup, so they would be forced to say Merry Christmas." And he was doing that in protest because they were saying Happy Holidays, and due to the fact that their cups were just plain red. They remember when it was just the red cup.
Yeah.
And here's the thing: I really want to zone in on this particular aspect of it. He wasn't complaining that there was no Jesus on the cup, that there was no nativity scene on the cup.
Right.
He was complaining that there weren't snowflakes anymore or Santa Claus. All right, which is ridiculous. He's not upset that per se that they're taking out the Christian part of this. He's just upset that there's no thing, but he's turning it into this is an attack on Christmas.
Yeah, and then there's another, non-Christian thing about Christmas. Santa Claus. How is Santa Claus Christian? Like, I don't get that. How is a big guy in a red suit that flies on a sleigh pulled by magic flying deer that goes to every house and delivers presents to the kids? Like, how is that even remotely Christian?
Beyond that, it's to the extent that parents have lots of parents, including myself, have had the conversation, are we going to let our child believe in Santa Claus? Like, that's a very real conversation for a lot of people. Lots and lots of parents, even secular ones. It's permeated deep into the culture. And that's the kind of thing. And I'm right there with you. I honestly have no idea how it became associated with Christianity or Christmas, like per se, like in general. It makes no sense.
There's actually a lot of Christians that have declared war on Christmas. I was watching recently this outrageous video of this pastor that walked into a mall, where they have the mall Santa, and kids go there and they take pictures and then whatever else kids do with Santa in the mall. And this guy came up to the line of people. It's a big line of parents, big mall, all the decorations, all the whole thing. And he starts screaming um, and telling the kids that Santa isn't real, that this is not Christian, that their parents are lying to them, and like just screaming off the top of his lungs. And all the parents got really upset. I mean, they drove the guy out, but not after he had like upset a lot of the children and all that. And you know, the so some of the pastors out there, some of the really religious people are in fact realizing that this whole Santa thing and the presents like that whole thing has nothing to do with Christianity and Christ and like any of that stuff. It's just a pagan holiday, just a made up commercial thing that we just do as a society. And frankly, we should still do it. It's fun. I mean, Christmas is fun. Like you spend time with people, you give them presents, the lights, the decorations. It's fun. Why not?
I celebrate. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, I just think that it's rather ironic to have people that are religious and go around saying, why are you lying to your children about Santa Claus? It's like, huh, aren't you lying to your children about a god?
Yeah.
It's a little ironic, don't you think?
No bit, no bit. I mean, it's kind of the same thing, I guess. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
A little make believe for the kids is fine.
yeah.
There's a lot of things in our society that kids can't really handle when they're really young. So a little make believe is fine.
Yeah,
But
believing in zombies is okay. You just got to realize that Jesus is one of them. Okay, that's all you have to realize.
actually, zombies are possible. There are certain diseases that make mice and other critters into zombies. So that's actually possible.
No, no, no. The definition of a zombie
Anyway.
is being dead,
Oh
but
yeah.
living. Yeah, yeah. That's the strict definition is being undead. So by that definition, no. No, 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 no. Nothing can be dead and alive simultaneously. That's
Well, all right, all right.
Well, I don't know. There's some that toes the line. There's this it's like a fungus or something that it might be just an amoeba or whatever. Anyway, there's something that infects a crab, and it infects its nervous system, and it effectively takes over the entire body. Quite literally, it infects it to the extent that it permeates a much of its interior. It's got an exoskeleton, so try to remember that, keep that in mind. So it permeates much of its interior physically, and it also takes over its nervous system, and it moves the crab. But the crab is still alive because it's feeding off of the crab's nutrients. It essentially replaces its nervous system with its own. For the most part, there's still much of its nervous system intact, so the thing can maintain breathing, for example, because the thing that's taking it over also requires oxygen. And I don't know, that kind of toes the line to me. That's kind
no, because it like I said, like you just said, it's alive. The crab is not dead.
Yeah.
It does not take over a
So
dead
it's
crab.
not, so
That's
it's not a
impossible.
real zombie, but
Yeah.
it's a functional zombie. But that's
I think that if
That's
I honestly think that if the crab were to die and the thing was still inside of it, the thing would have enough energy to move the crab. Would that count? It would have
That would
enough.
not last long.
Yeah, it wouldn't, but it would be able to go for a little while. What about that? What about for that brief period of time? Is that a zombie?
No, because once you cut off my head, that does not mean I'm a zombie for 5 seconds. That doesn't mean that. Yeah.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough. That's a good point. Point taken. I stand corrected and I concede.
All right, guys. Well, I think we're running out of time, and we should wrap this up. But just to kind of summarize, there is no war on Christmas. Hopefully people go out there, enjoy time with, or by the time the episode airs out, hopefully people have enjoyed their time with their family, have gotten some good presents, and if you didn't go to a Christ mass, good for you. If you went, hope you had fun. We're not here to judge you, but
yes,
the
you
war
can
on
keep the
Christmas is
holiday
fake.
and skip church.
There you go. Perfect. All right. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Hopefully you'll join us again next week. Goodbye.
On the Hoosier Humanist Hour.
That is all the time we have for you this week. This has been the Hoosier Humanist Hour. Be sure to check out FreeThought Fort Wayne on Facebook and on Meetup.com. Thank you for listening, and we hope your days are filled with logic, reasoning, and the eternal quest for knowledge.
Hopefully people have enjoyed